Good evening. I've just noticed on the back cover there, maybe I didn't show it last time, there's a nice image of Winston Graham there, the author of the Poldark novels. Can you see that? Yes, that's what he looked like. He wrote to me once. I had a letter from him once. Well, I wrote to him and received a reply. I'll have to find that. Anyway, I'm going to read from Demelza because this is a request, and I was asked to read something about the Assembly Ball, the ball which Ross and Demelza attend just after Ross breaks into, or goes into Launceston Gale and rescues Jim, and sadly Jim dies. Jim Carter dies, and Ross could remember Jim Carter. They shared their youth together, so he had quite a strong bond with Jim Carter. And so this is the Assembly Rooms ball, and Ross and Demelza are staying at the Warleggans. They've been invited by George Warleggan to sup and spend the night. And so I'm reading from book 2, and it's the end of chapter 10. I'm just going to move my chair a little bit over, that's it, and take a little drop of strawberry juice. It was to be another gavotte, less stately and sedate than the minuet, and popular enough to get most people on the floor. Competition for Demelza was still strong. During the interval, and fortified by some French claret for a change, she had put forward all her talents in conversation to take notice from Verity, who was sitting mute beside her. It was really her own fault that at this stage the snarling grew worse, for, what with thinking of Verity and her anxiety for Ross, she had been careless what she said, and no less than 3 men thought she had promised the dance. John Trineglos had been dragged away for a time by his furious wife. But Sir Hubert Druggan was one of the 3, trying his weight and seniority, she thought, to carry her off from Whitworth, who was relying on his cloth to support him in the face of Sir Hugh's scowls. The 3rd was Ensign Carruthers, who was sweating a lot, but was sticking to the Navy's tradition and not striking his flag. First they argued with her, then they argued with each other, and then they appealed to her again, while William Hick made it worse by putting in remarks. Demelza, a little overwrought, waved her glass and said they should toss a coin for her. This struck Carruthers as eminently fair, only he preferred dice. But Sir Hugh grew angry and said he had no intention of gaming on a ballroom floor for any woman. All the same, he was not willing to give up the woman. Demelza suggested he should take Verity. Verity said, "Oh, Demelza," and Sir Hugh bowed to Verity and said, "Thank you. A later dance, certainly." At that moment a tall man showed at the back of the others, and Demelza wondered with a sinking feeling if this was a 4th claimant. Then she raised her head and saw it was indeed. "Forgive me, sir," said Ross, pushing his way in. "You'll pardon me, sir. You'll pardon me, sir." He arrived on the edge of the ring and bowed slightly, rather coldly, to Demelza. "I come to see if you were in need of anything, my dear." Demelza got up. "I knew I'd promised this dance to someone," she said. There was a general laugh, in which Sir Hugh did not join. He had been drinking all evening, and did not at first recognize Ross, whom he saw seldom. "Nay, sir. Nay, ma'am. This is unfair, by heavens! It was promised to me. I tell you, it was promised to me. I tell you, it was promised. I'll not have it. I'm not accustomed to have my word called into question." Ross looked at him, at the silk ruffles of his shirt stained with splashes of wine, at his broad, heavy face, hair growing in tufts in the nostrils and the ears, at the curled black wig worn low over his brow, at his dark purple coat, red silk embroidered waistcoat, and silk knee breeches. He looked him up and down. For Sir Hugh, no less than the others, had had his hand in Jim's death. The fact that he had been dancing with Demelza was an affront. "Have you promised this dance?" Ross said to Demelza. Demelza looked up into his cold eyes, sought there for understanding and found none. Her heart turned bitter. "Yes," she said. "Maybe I promised this to Sir Hugh. Come along, Sir Hugh. I hardly know how to dance the gavotte, not properly like, but you can show me. You shall be splendid in that last country dance, Sir Hugh." He turned and would have gone out with the baronet to join the others, who were now all formed up, but Ross suddenly caught her hand. "Nevertheless, I take this by right. So you must disappoint all your friends." Sir Hugh had recognised him now. He opened his mouth to protest. "Damn it! It's late in the evening to show a lively interest." But Ross had gone, and Demelza, furious and desperately hurt, went with him. They bowed to each other as the music began. They didn't dance at all well together. "Perhaps," said Demelza, trembling all over, "perhaps I ought to have asked for an introduction, seeing it's so long since we met. I don't doubt you have been well consoled in my absence," said Ross. "You were not concerned to come and see whether I was or no. It seems that I was unwelcome when I did. Well, everyone wasn't so ill-mannered and neglectful as you. It is always possible at these places to collect a few hangers-on. There are always some such about looking for those who will give them encouragement." Demelza said with triumphant bitterness, "No, Ross, you do me wrong, and them too. One is a baronet, and lives at Wherry House. He has asked me to tea and cards. One is a clergyman who has travelled all over the continent. One is an officer in the Navy. One even is a relative of yours." "Oh no, Ross, you can't say that." "I can, and I do." He was as furious as she was. "One is a lecherous old roo whose name stinks in decent circles. One is a simpering, posturing fop who will bring the church more disrepute. One is a young sailor out for a lark with any moll. They come for what they can get, they and their kind. I wonder you're not sick with their compliments." "I'll not cry," said Demelza to herself. "I'll not cry, I'll not cry, I'll not cry." They bowed to each other again. "I detest them all," Ross said on a slightly less personal note. "These people with their stupidity. Look at their fat bellies and gouty noses and wagging dewlaps and pouchy eyes, overfed and overclothed and overwined and overpainted. I don't understand that you find pleasure in mixing with them. No wonder Swift wrote of them as he did. If these are my people, then I'm ashamed to belong to them." They separated, and as they came back together again, Demelza suddenly fired back. "Well, if you think all the stupids and all the fat and ugly ones are in your class, you're just as wrong as anyone. Because Jim had ill luck and died, and because Jim and Ginny were good nice people, you seem to think that all poor folk are as good and nice as they. Well, you're mortal wrong there, and I can tell you because I know. I've lived with them, which is more'n you'll ever do. There's good and bad in all sorts and conditions, and you'll not put the world to rights by thinking all these people here are to blame for Jim's death." "Yes, they are, by their selfishness and their sloth," And you'll not put the world to rights by thinking, by neither drinking brandy all evening and gambling in the gambling rooms and leaving me to see for myself at my first ball, and then coming halfway through and being rude to them that have tried to look after me. If you behave like this, you'll not come to another ball. She faced him. If you behave like this, I'll not want to. They found they had both stopped dancing. They were holding up people. He passed a hand across his face. "Demelza," he said, "we have both drunk too much." "Would you kindly move off the floor, sir?" said a voice behind him. "I don't want to quarrel," Demelza said with a full throat. "I never have. You know that. You can't expect me to feel the same about Jim as you do, Ross. I didn't know him hardly at all, and I didn't go to Launceston. Maybe this is commonplace for you, but 'tis the first time I've ever been to anything. I'd be that happy if you could be happy." "Damn the rejoicings," he said. "We should never have come." "Please move aside, sir," said another exasperated voice. "If you wish to hold a conversation, do it elsewhere." "I talk where I please," said Ross, and gave the man a look. The fellow wilted and backed away with his partner. Demelza said in a soft voice, "Come, Ross, dance, show me. A step this way, isn't it? And a step that." "I've never properly danced the gavotte, but it is nice and lively. Come, my dear, we're not dead yet, and there's always tomorrow. Let us dance together nicely before we fall out worse." Poor Demelza. Goodness gracious.